Before Easter, I highlighted the £2 million that the government wasted on a turnaround manager at Ferguson's who left the yard in a worse state than he found it. The First Minister supported paying him nearly £3,000 a day while Scots faced a cost of living crisis. But this is not the only waste of public money that the First Minister has supported. So can the First Minister tell the Chamber how much money her government has wasted since 2007 because of delays, loan write-offs or avoidable spending?
First Minister.
I don't have that figure to hand. I'm happy to look at that. I suspect the way Anas Sarwar is characterising that may not be entirely one that I would agree with, but I'm more than happy to look at his question and the detail of that and write to him with the information in due course.
Anas Sarwar.
The answer is over £3 billion. That is the cost of SNP failure, the loss of public money due to SNP incompetence. And the list is endless. £152 million on a failed credit contract at Ferguson's, £146 million fixing the government's mistakes at the Edinburgh Sick Kids and the Queen Elizabeth in Glasgow, £40 million and rising on the malicious prosecution of Rangers, almost £200 million on failed industrial interventions and loan write-offs, nearly £1 billion for agency workers in the health service because Nicola Sturgeon cut training places when Health Secretary, over £1 billion on delayed discharge because of their failure to fix the social care crisis, £3 billion. That is the equivalent of a £1,200 bill for every household in Scotland. Every penny of this wasted money could mean more cash for the NHS, more cash for our schools, or more cash to tackle the cost of living crisis. Rather than helping people with the cost of living crisis, why is this government instead making them pay the cost of SNP failure?
First Minister.
Well, I did say that I suspected Anas Sarwar's characterisation of this would be an utter mischaracterisation. It turns out I was absolutely right on that. Let me, before I come on to some of the details, some of the ridiculous, I didn't think the opposition would be exceeded in terms of being ridiculous in their questioning today. But I'll come on to that in a second. But what Anas Sarwar failed, of course, to mention is that this government has had 15 years of unqualified accounts. That is the reality in terms of our stewardship of the public finances. But let me give them two.
They don't understand it.
Obviously, they don't understand that point. It's a rather important point. But let me come on. Let me come on to the detail. So two of the examples. One of the examples is talking about prosecution. Prosecution decisions, of course, being matters for the independent Crown Office. And yet he is Anas Sarwar seriously saying that I, as First Minister, or any Minister of this government, should have interfered in the independent prosecution decisions of the Crown Office? Perhaps he should clarify that matter. And then the second example I will use, where he is downright wrong, is his £146 million of additional costs in relation to hospitals. So the vast majority of that figure, and I've looked at that closely because I've heard Labour use it, relates to planned costs which were in no way new, unexpected or avoidable. So, for example, £80 million of that related to preparatory works which were separate to the main contract but were budgeted costs included in the business case. Another £33 million related to the annual service payment, also part of the original business case. So there's a lot of nonsense in the question that Anas Sarwar has just asked there, and perhaps he should reflect on that.
Anas Sarwar.
Asking about wasted money, that's a waste of an answer from the First Minister right there. £40 million in a malicious prosecution, the first time ever in Scottish history. Perhaps the government should reflect on that. A hospital built for Edinburgh Sick Kids that failed to open. Perhaps the government should reflect on that. The failures in the Glasgow Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Perhaps the government should reflect on that. Because right around the country we are seeing the cost of SNP failure. And at the same time, energy bills are up, petrol prices are up, and the weekly shop is more expensive than ever. Right now in Scotland, there are mums skipping meals in order to feed their kids. People are knocking back items at food banks because they can't afford to cook them. And in the face of the biggest drop in living standards since the Second World War, both our governments are not doing enough. Instead of wasting billions of pounds paying the cost of SNP failure, we should be supporting families with a cost of living crisis. The £111 million of loan write-offs could have been used to top up the Scottish Welfare Fund. The £152 million misspent mismanaging Ferguson's could have been used to halve rail fares for 3 months, not 3 weeks, and cap bus fares. The £1 billion on delayed discharge could have been used to give our care workers the pay rise they deserve. While families right now are being forced to account for every single penny of their spending, why does this First Minister think it is acceptable for them to pay the cost of £3.2 billion and rising of SNP failure?
First Minister.
There are some really serious issues in there, and I hope, if not during this session, then after this session, Anas Sarwar will clarify at least, well, 2 points actually. But firstly, this one, because this is actually a serious constitutional question. He has twice now referenced the Rangers prosecution and the cost of settling that. But if he thinks that is something that I could have influenced, then is he saying that ministers should have been involved in or influencing the independent prosecution decisions or intervened in any way in that? And if he is going to somehow suggest, as he has, that those costs are waste on the part of the SNP, then he really has to answer. He really has to answer that fundamental question. Does he think I should have interfered in the prosecution decisions of the Crown Office? The second point, going back to the £146 million in relation to the hospital, is he saying that £80 million on essential preparation work shouldn't have been done for those hospitals? Because that is the logical conclusion of what he's saying. So the spin and the sound bites might sound good when Anas Sarwar is rehearsing these questions, but I think he should pay a bit more attention to the detail.
First Minister, if I may, there is a lot of background contribution going on in the chamber at the moment, and I'd be grateful if it could cease and we could hear the First Minister. Thank you.
And to come on to what I think is the important part of the question, which is the cost of living crisis, Anas Sarwar has referenced rising petrol costs and rising energy costs. Can I remind Anas Sarwar that power over energy and the cost of petrol are still reserved to Westminster, and if he wants to change that, then he should argue for those powers to come here. And in terms of the wider cost of living, we've increased the benefits that this government is responsible for. We've doubled the child payment, and if we are to be able to do more, then he needs to support us in calling for greater welfare powers to come to this Parliament as well.